So is an angry and divided America now on a collision course?
With itself. Peter Johnson Jr. joins us now to untangle some of the constitutional issues surrounding this.
Good morning.
So, Peter, the conventional understanding is you've got a right to protest as long as you don't impinge on my right to freedom of speech. Is that constitutionally correct?
You can protest in any time, manner, restriction that the law allows, but you can't shut down a road. You can't hurt someone and tell them to stop going into a rally. You can't make people fear that they're going to suffer violence by going into a rally. And so we are on a collision course in America because we have a clash of revolutions in America. And let me explain that. On one side is the Trump revolution, which is a populist, conservative-based revolution. On the other side, we have a socialist revolution. And some anarchists mixed in that you see in these protesters that want to shut down rallies. We saw it in Arizona yesterday. We saw it in Chicago last week. We'll see it in other cities across the country. And so anger for many people, especially on the left, has become an ideology.
Is it real anger, though? Because
it is real anger, yes.
I mean, you get these MoveOn.org sending out emails, getting people riled up, and then when cameras and microphones go in these people's faces at these rallies, they can't answer why they're even there.
We are at a critical time in our history, I believe. Now, whenever there are protests, everyone gets upset, and they say, this is really bad for America, and we've got to be careful. At this point, we really do have to be careful. Anger is not a solution. Anger is not an ideology. In my view, on the left and the right, anger should be a point of inspiration for future construction, not for deconstruction, not for taking America apart. Anger should be a motivation, not a point of desperation. So when the people on the left resort to these kind of tactics, and then the people on the right sometimes, unfortunately, mimic them in the notion that when you go into a rally and you see someone being taken out of that rally who has perhaps committed a crime, to sucker punch that person. That's wrong.
Well, it's appalling.
That's wrong.
Well, it's also wrong the vandalism that we're seeing, like the Trump campaign headquarters. There had the window smashed. A guy apparently tried to pick up a big potted plant that was too heavy, so he decided to grab a garbage can instead.
There's no equivalency. And what I'm saying is that we have to decide on our values at this point in this country. And I think people admire the ability of Americans to go into a Trump rally a lot more than they admire the ability of 1,000 people or 2,000 people to act in a destructive way to shut it down and shut the First Amendment down. The issue becomes, who is the true fascist in America? A lot of these folks want to say, well, Donald Trump is a fascist. He's engaged in xenophobic speech. He's engaged in anti-woman speech. He's engaged in hateful speech. That's all up for debate. But it's about debate. It's not about violence. And it's not about me pulling on you, Tucker, or you, Anna, or you, Clayton, and say, don't go into that rally.
But there's this idea that kids seem to have that there is a stark limit to free speech, and it begins at the point at which I disagree with your speech. I get to call it hate speech, and you no longer have a right to utter that speech. That's nowhere in the Constitution, I've noticed.
Hate speech does not exist under the Constitution. Fighting words are not allowed under the Constitution, but so-called hate speech. One person's hate speech is another person's public policy sometimes. I disagree with Donald Trump on a lot of issues, but I also see why a lot of Americans value him as a new leader in America. All new leaders, all ideas have to be heard and compete in a battleground of ideas, not in a battleground of closing roads and fists and threats of violence. And we're seeing threats of violence and fists being thrown for people who want to go to Trump rallies. That's wrong in America today. That has to be stopped. And Democrats have to speak out against it, and Donald Trump needs to speak out against it. All elected and political leaders need to speak out. Wrong across the board. Don't need it.
Amen.
Yeah,
don't hold your breath.
De-escalation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Appreciate it.